Entrepreneurship clarity is a deep understanding of your business's why, its purpose, a focused comprehension of its vision and goals, what your intended offerings are, and how strategy and actions will lead to aligned decisions, confident execution, and consistent growth. It allows you to move beyond confusion in favor of purposeful direction and impact. Quite frankly, it's the difference between feeling lost and helpless in your business in favor of a clear direction and a roadmap to success, involving self-awareness, strategic planning, and the ability to articulate a compelling narrative for not only yourself, but your customers as well. Meanwhile, my friends over at LinkedIn reports 53% of CEOs report that strategy development is their number one priority. Also, 71% of CEOs say it's the difference between high-performing organizational cultures and teams. If a CEO possesses strategic clarity and cultural alignment, this is all good news for my friend Adam Smith to consider. He's the founding director at A-Game Consultancy, where they offer high-performance coaching for founders, CEOs, high-level business owners, transforming their mindset, health, relationships, all in an effort to improve performance in business and entrepreneurship and fulfillment at home. And Smith joined me this week to tell me more. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Take a moment to welcome you to the program on this Wednesday, my friend. Thanks for being here. I'm excited to talk to you all about your efforts in helping entrepreneurs define clarity in their business. Great to see you this morning, and thank you so very much for being here.
All good, mate. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, Adam, I know that business owners and CEOs hire you to establish more clarity and a clearer vision in their business, my friend. So tell me about all the great work that you do and what's your best sort of analysis on how we achieve clarity in business, my friend. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I think we overlook the absolute basics. So we have to get out of our head. And taking a pen to paper and writing down what your vision is a good starting point. So if you can start to plan or get an idea of what it is that you want your organization to look like, what you want the values to be, the mission statement, the vision, and just give yourself some time to build that out. It's going to be a great pathway initially. But what happens after that is it starts to get some more inspiration, and you can bring in other people that might be associated to the organization as well, and they can start contributing their ideas. And it all starts with just the absolute basic foundations. It's kind of the same when it comes to helping yourself feel better. Drink water, get outside and eat healthily. It's a great place to start, but we tend to overcomplicate things. So I have to get the CEO or the business owner out of their head in a non-judgmental space. I don't tell them that they're wrong. I don't tell them that they're stupid. I don't try to fix them or anything like that because they're not broken. They just need a soundboard where they can offload some of the challenges or some of the fears that they may have around their organization or what is possible for it. And then once we can design that blueprint, then it's the first step, which is great because then it's all just a momentum builder. And momentum is everything in business. You're either building momentum in a positive way or in a really negative way. So we always start on the right foot.
Yeah, absolutely. And Adam, you talked about relinquishing control and really allowing CEOs to really come to the realization that sometimes relinquishing control, whether it be with their employees or if they hire a business consultant like yourself, is important sometimes to step back and really get a full forecast of your business outlook. So talk about the importance of a delegation and helping CEOs understand that they don't have to do it all, because that's also important, isn't it?
Absolutely, mate. Yeah. When I look at teams that are successful, I often do a lot of relation to sports teams. And as great as Michael Jordan was, he couldn't do everything on his own. He needed a coach, he needed teammates, he needed a team of specialists in the background to help him with his recovery, with his diet, with his sleep. So if we're talking about arguably one of the greatest athletes to ever live needing support, we'll probably need it as well. And I think it's being okay with that and accepting that, because otherwise what I see with a lot of small business owners is that they got away from a job because they didn't enjoy it. They wanted to set out their own business. But if you do everything yourself all the time, then really you don't own a business, you own a job. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with a job, but most business owners did not leave a stressful 60-hour week environment to then go to a 100-hour week environment and not know how to delegate or feel comfortable doing so, because a lot of them stay imprisoned to that role and they say they can't, no one can do it as good as me, when in reality they absolutely can. So I think it can sometimes come from insecurity, because I think ego and insecurity are kind of one of the same, to be honest with you. And whenever I see anybody that's egotistical, I don't see strength, I see weakness. And, you know, we all have an ego to an extent, but you have to let that go if you want the business to grow in the right way. So I say all the time, let it go to let it grow, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And Adam, I'm also curious to ask you about how making sure that your vision for your business also aligns with your mission statement, because it's important that you stay true to your vision and mission statement. And I'm wondering how those two things align in your view, my friend.
Yeah, I think they are very important, don't get me wrong, because that does set the foundation and almost the sat nav for where you want the business to be and how you want to behave every single day. So those things are very important, but I personally think that the daily values and the daily behaviors and daily habits will determine the culture and the direction of the business. Because a lot of companies, when you read their vision and their mission statement, it's all jargon that doesn't really mean anything. So by all means, have one and revert back to it. But I think it's far more important to be in alignment with the daily tasks that are completed. How do you communicate with your employees? If you speak to your employees like garbage and your vision is to have the best ever company that the world's ever seen and develop its people, blah, 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 it's kind of meaningless. So set them by all means, but ensure that you live by them every single day, because that's the only way that alignment is going to be there.
Yeah, and you also say that business owners don't really know how far off track they are until something breaks. And you say it's important to have a business audit to show them exactly where you're out of sync and how to get back in control, my friend. So tell me about the importance of that, making sure that things don't break in your business, and how we can stay on a track record for success, my friend. What are your thoughts then?
Yeah, I think again it comes down to clarity, and we've already sort of touched on it, that word alignment means everything, because I see a lot of business owners are out of alignment because they don't know who they are outside of their business. So they will have the car, they'll have the house, they'll have the 2.4 kids and the partner and the dog and the white picket fence, but they say they want to be a family man or family woman, and they're scrolling on their phone at the dinner table because they're checking their emails, or the children are asking to play with them and they're too distracted by getting the proposal out. So if you want to identify as a successful business owner, but also a great mother or father, for instance, and you don't do those things, then straight away you've created a bit of a stick to hit yourself with, because you're not living in alignment with exactly what it is that you want. So I don't think it's just about business. I think this is about the whole bigger picture, whether it is your health, whether it is your relationships, whether it is your mind, spending time with your family. How does this all play a part in the business? So I help a lot of the CEOs and business owners that I work with to create that outside of the working hours. Because if you don't have any boundaries or non-negotiables within your business, then by the very definition, you'll never not be working.
Yeah, absolutely. And that leads nicely into my next question, because I wanted to ask you about choices that we make as entrepreneurs. Because you say as CEOs or business owners or entrepreneurs that they are where they are today or because of the result of the choices that they make, my friend, in their business. So talk to me about making smart and strategic choices in business that can also affect your own life. You touched on it in your last answer, but I wanted to give you the platform in order to do that, my friend.
Yeah, I think so many people get stuck in decision paralysis of what could go right, what could go wrong, and so they don't make a decision. But that in itself is a decision. You're deciding not to take action either way. And the clarity that you are seeking is in the decisions that you're avoiding. So, yes, we have some evidence based decisions, but reverting back to my metaphor or analogy around sport earlier, if the coach brings on the player and then he comes on and he scores the winning goal or gets the winning basket, the coach is a genius. If he doesn't bring on the player whatsoever and the team lose, oh, why didn't you bring on so and so? Because they would have impacted the game, even though we don't know that. Or you could bring on the player, make the right decision with the right information, and it could go completely wrong, and they might get red carded. So, it's we won't know until you've made the decision. But so many people tell me that they procrastinate, and really it's all coming from a place of fear. We don't want to be seen to be making the wrong decision. So we just don't make one and hope that it kind of goes away. But after a while, this will compound and it will impact you negatively if you don't do it. But if you do it and it doesn't quite work out, you've gathered data. But what if you do it and it turns out to be the best decision you've ever made, and it might be revolutionary for your life and your business, and you've been holding on to it? What's the opportunity cost of not doing it? Questions like this are far more empowering.
Yeah, absolutely. And Adam, I wanted to talk to you about the whole concept of business burnout, because according to a 2024 staff industry analysis, my friend, over half of managers at 53% and executives at 56% report feeling burned out because of a lack of resources and the fact that they feel that they have to do everything, my friend. So I'm curious to ask you about your thoughts on these findings and what we do about business burnout as entrepreneurs and CEOs, my friend.
Sure. So if I'm an employee, I would be, where possible, putting in as many boundaries as you can. Now, I know some people will find this an unpopular opinion, but my partner's a corporate lawyer. She works a lot of hours, and they are in a position where it's almost an expectation to work 100-hour weeks. And if you do anything other than that, you get criticized. But it impacts all of their health, it impacts all of their relationships. At times it's impacted my relationship with her because she's working so much. And, it's very difficult. So, from the employee standpoint, it's quite difficult to be allowed to put in those boundaries. But if you can, then absolutely do that to protect yourself. But this isn't the employee's responsibility, really. This comes from the employer. And if you are sending out emails at 10 p.m. and the employees are responding, then you just taught your employer that it's okay to email you at 10 p.m. because they'll get a response. However, it comes back to culture. It comes back to expectation. And does that really need to be answered at 11 p.m. or could it wait until 7 a.m. the next day? So the real reason why a lot of people struggle again to do this is through fear. It's through lack of communication. It's through having no boundaries or no non-negotiables. And then unfortunately, burnout is a very real thing. It's that position where you feel like you've got nothing left to offer, where you are constantly on, you can't switch your mind off, and you're always in this dissonance between should I be relaxing or should I be working, and then you get stuck in no man's land, and it just causes further problems. So I know that there's some deeply ingrained negative habits that have been instilled in things like law firms and corporate America and finance and stockbroking and all that kind of thing. But personally, I think it's nonsense, because if you want to perform at your absolute best, you can't always be on. That's not how it works. You have to have time to decompress and step outside of yourself and to gather more ideas and bring better energy to the organization. So, if I will never tell my employees that they have to work after a certain hour, and I always communicate, look, if I'm sending you a message at 9 p.m., that's just so I've got it out of my head, but I do not expect a response at 9 p.m. because I don't want to build the wrong culture within my own team, because I've been a victim of bad culture several times.
Sorry about that. I also wanted to ask you about the whole concept of the cost of business burnout, because the World Health Organization last year said that from a global perspective, business burnout can cost businesses as much as $322 billion, my friend. It can also affect turnover, ableism, and the reduced productivity level, my friend. So I'm interested to get your thoughts on how the cost of business burnout can affect business decisions as well, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a director that's, I don't know, earning, let's say, $100,000 a year, and then you work them to the bone, and then they're off work sick for 3 months, not only have you got the salary that you need to cover there, but you're also losing the output. And from a six-figure executive, I would imagine that output is quite large. So the constant need to be on and pushing people until they can't go anymore has such a negative impact as opposed to a positive one. If that person was maybe working 50 hours as opposed to 80 hours, the output, I would argue, is probably going to actually be higher. So I think it's a complete facade. I think it's nonsense that organizations do this. Don't get me wrong, from time to time, if you're completing a deal and you might have to work some more hours that week, fine, but to constantly push people is only going to be detrimental. And that figure that you just gave there is shocking, but not surprising, unfortunately,
Yeah, absolutely. Adam, last week we celebrated the International Day for Persons with Disabilities, and as you know, I was born with cerebral palsy, and I talked to organizations about the importance of hiring folks with disabilities. So could you share with me your thoughts on how entrepreneurs, CEOs, or organizational leaders can benefit by the infusion of persons with disabilities in the workforce, my friend. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think it's great because you need different perspectives on life. And the more perspectives and viewpoints you can have, the more beneficial it's going to be from an organization. And, me personally, I would never look at anyone, whether it's a physical disability, a learning difficulty, or anything like that, to say they're not right, that they're not a fit for the company. You go for what the right person is for the role that's needed. So I think that also a lot of people that have disabilities have probably experienced hardship that most people could never even fathom. So the resilience level and the mindset that the people like yourself will have is going to be a huge asset to any business. But I think the main point is that it's key to have diversity and it's key to have different perspectives so it can open all of our minds to what's possible.
Meanwhile, LinkedIn also reports highly aligned companies, those with strategic clarity, grow revenue 58% faster, and additionally, 72% of organizations are more profitable than less aligned companies. And data-driven enterprises are 6% more profitable than their competitors. Therefore, I was curious to ask Smith his thoughts on those findings and what we can learn from them.
Oh, massive. I've got quite a small team at the moment in my organization. It's myself, my business partner, and we have a team of contractors. But when I was in hospitality before, I was managing teams as large as 80 or 90 people. And in any organization, you're going to have some people that are rowing the boat very, vigorously. You're going to have some people that are just sort of in the boat and, casually drinking in the view. And then you're going to have other people that are trying to sink the boat. And it's imperative to get rid of these people because it's a cancer to the organization, because not only is it detrimental to the guest or to the client or customer, whatever industry you're in, it's also going to bring down the rest of the morale. They'll start looking at their schedule and saying, oh God, I don't want to work with Dave, or I don't want to be there when Sarah's there, because all they do is bring the morale and the negativity down. So I made it the absolute priority in any team that I led that if you're not with us, you're against us. And I don't mean that in a horrible, sadistic way. It's just a simple case of, these are my values. These are the goals of the business. This is where I want to take it. Are you on board? And if people said, no, I don't think I am actually, no problem. I'll find somebody else that is. Because it's not only a cost financially, but it's a cost mentally to you as the business owner and the leader, but it's also the detrimental impact of the team. And if you are in a customer-facing role, or even if you're not, frankly, it's going to have a negative impact on your clients or customers as well. So it's like the old cliche, isn't it? It only takes one bad apple, and I think that's absolutely true. So if you can remove that apple as quickly as possible, you're going to make way for somebody else who is much more aligned with the vision and what you want to have achieved.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also wanted to talk to you about making decisions based on data, because research also indicates that when we make data-driven decisions within an organization, that are not 19 times more likely, my friend, to be a profitable business. Businesses also using big data have reported an 8% increase in profit and a 10% reduction in cost, with 69% of businesses citing better strategic decisions as the reason, my friend. So I'm wondering your thoughts on the benefits of making data-driven decisions and how they can affect our decision-making in business. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
It's one of the first things that I focus on. So I've done some coaching consultancy for other coaches that are starting out their business, and they might be 6 months in, and I don't know, let's say they're doing an average of 5K a month or something like that. and they might say, oh, there's no possibility that I can get to 10K, or I can't charge X amount of money. And we always go to the data. It's a phrase that I use, is facts over feelings. And the more you can follow the fact, the better, because it's okay to be entitled, and you're entitled to have your feelings. It's okay to have that feeling, but is there any evidence that this feeling needs to exist, or this belief needs to exist? Well, let's track the data. Well, let's look at how many clients you've onboarded. So all you'd need to get to the 10K month is 2 new clients. So therefore, you might need 4 sales calls. If you need 4 sales calls, how many conversations do you need to have to generate that? I need to have 20. How many messages do you need to send to have 20 conversations? Oh, 250. Right, well then to get 2 new clients, you need to be sending 250 messages. Because then it starts to remove the guesswork of that's not possible, or I can't do that, because we don't have put negative labels on ourselves of what's possible. So if instead we can go off the data, it just removes any negativity bias that we may have.
Yeah, absolutely. And Adam, I also wanted to ask you, if I made you a star of your own business clarity commercial, and I asked you to put 3 strategies for business clarity in the commercial, I'm wondering what those 3 strategies would be, my friend.
Great question. That's a great question. Oh, I think we've touched on it a couple of times already, but clarity, if you're not clear on what it is that you want to achieve, and I mean crystal clear clarity, not just some vague idea of, oh, it might be nice if. No, what do you want to do? How do you want to serve people? How are you going to deliver a better product than anybody? How can we scale this without burning out? How can we ensure the team is behind it? So getting the clarity on things is definitely one. I would say alignment is huge as well. I know we've touched on that a few times, because if you're out of alignment, you can have the best clear plan all you want, but if you're not acting in alignment, then you're just going to be stuck with a good idea all the time. So the daily habits and the behaviors have to match the vision. And then the last one I would say is just take action. Once you've got clarity on what you want, you feel aligned with what you want to achieve, you have to just take the action. But so many people just get stuck, like I said earlier, in that decision paralysis of should I, shouldn't I, what if? Just go for it. You've got all the data now, so let's just go attack it, because otherwise you'll be stuck in the exact same position that you are right now a year from now, or maybe even worse. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And Adam, I'm also curious to ask you about the global business climate, because I know you're in the UK, I'm in Canada, and obviously what happens in the American business landscape also affects the reality of doing business and starting businesses and leading organizations. So I'm curious to get your perspective on the global business climate and how you look at organizations both in the UK, America, and Canada, and abroad as well, my friend. How do you currently view the current global sort of business ecosystem, my friend? What are your thoughts then?
It's interesting. It's an area that I know enough about. I wouldn't be able to talk to the direct challenges of Canada or the US, and quite frankly, every single area of the UK. What I do know right now is that the most equipped businesses, the ones that deliver the best service, that can follow through what they said they were going to do, they can communicate that in the best way, are going to survive. And what I also know is that with the introduction of things like AI, if you don't get on board with that now, you might just become completely obsolete in a few years. So you have to embrace the change. We've seen a very, very slight downturn in terms of revenue this year compared to last year. But we know, ironically, that was due to a lack of clarity or getting into decision paralysis. So when I talk about the things I've mentioned today, I don't want anyone to think that I'm perfect, because I'm certainly not. We have our own challenges within our own organization. So, if you don't have that clear vision, you don't have the culture, you don't have the delivery, you don't have the alignment, then you are going to fall by the wayside. So I think that now more than ever, we have to double down on the human experience as much as possible to build more trust. So I think that service-based businesses that require face-to-face are going to increase, and I think they're going to remain very successful. But I think certain organizations are really going to struggle. And, as much as people want to resist the AI, you have to embrace it. You have to lean into it and start implementing certain strategies right now to make it more cost effective, more efficient, and make it so that people can't get rid of your service.
Yeah, and Adam, I'm also curious to ask you how transforming our physical health can also help with our mental health and business, and also our health overall of our organizational culture. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, I think when you look at there's a book by a palliative nurse called Bonnie Ware, and it's the 5 Confessions of the Dying. And at no point did any of them say, "I really wish that I'd have worked more." So it's not to say that I have a resistance to doing hard work and to pushing ourselves, but your health is absolutely everything, because without it, you've got nothing. When you look at David Bowie was worth 700 million, that couldn't save him from the illness that he got. Steve Jobs was a billionaire, but that couldn't save him from the disease that he had. If you asked him, would you trade everything for another 20 years of life? I know what the answer would be. I'd imagine it would be yes anyway. Mm-hmm. So if we don't look after our health, we don't look after our own mind, we don't look after our bodies to the best of our ability, then there is no business, because there's no one to run it. So if you don't do the basics, like I touched on earlier about the drinking the water, the eating healthy, getting outside, getting exercise where you possibly can, looking at your sleep, avoiding alcohol, things like that, then yeah, you're kind of fighting a losing battle, I would suggest. So it's one of the key pillars and cornerstones of our coaching, is that we have to ensure that you've got the healthy habits and that we are checking your health. We do blood tests for people, we create nutrition plans for people, etc. Because without that, you're not going to have the energy to function. You're not going to have the focus to move the needle in the business. And then eventually you are going to end up being overweight, burnt out, stressed, not sleeping. And the detrimental impact of that over time is catastrophic.
Yeah, absolutely. And Adam, I'm going to combine my last 2 questions because they're interconnected, my friend. I'm curious to get your final thoughts on how to create an elite organizational culture, and your final message to organizational leaders about the importance of culture, because I believe that investing in your people are your best sort of strategy for success, my friend, because any organization is only as good as the people that bring into it, my friend. So I'm curious about your thoughts on organizational culture, and finally about your own personal and professional legacy and how you want that to be defined, my friend.
Awesome. Yeah, so I think without culture, I mean, everyone has a culture, but without a positive culture, you've got limited time, because you can have the best product, you can have good customer-facing service, etc. But if the culture behind the scenes is off, eventually that will come to pass. People will start to see the cracks that are going to appear. So it's having a set of non-negotiables and values that people understand from the get-go. It's to be respectful. It's to listen without judgment. It's to follow through with what you said you were going to do. It's to communicate what boundaries are applicable for you before we start, so we have an understanding. It's lending an ear. It's asking people how they are and actually caring about the answer. It's all these things that are just so overlooked by a large amount of organizations. Don't have pointless meetings where you sat down for 3 hours. Do your meetings stood up. That's culture. Time the meetings for 20 minutes. You'd be amazed at how much you can get through of deep focused work without just hemorrhaging money and energy from people. But I think that it goes back to the old adage, people won't always remember what you said, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. So that's a huge element of what we focus on at A-Game, is that we treat everyone with respect, that they are heard, that they've got a voice, and that they feel safe, not just physically, but emotionally as well. And in terms of legacy, to be honest with you, mate, I've got, again, a bit of an unpopular opinion about this. I think leaving a legacy at the expense of being present is nonsense, because I'll speak to some directors of large organizations who work 100 hours a week and they tell me they want to leave a legacy for their family. Well, your family don't care about your legacy. They want your presence. They want you to be at home more. They want you to ensure that, they feel safe and that they feel valued. Because if you don't provide that, then what does a legacy really mean? Do you mean the big house? Do you mean the millions that you made? So I think it's quite a self-serving ideology to leave a legacy. If you save lives, or if you set up foundations that help people in a variety of different ways, then yeah, naturally that'll probably lead to a legacy. But what are you really doing it for? That's my challenge, because a lot of people tell me, I do everything for my family. Would you go sober for them? Would you put your phone or laptop away at the table for them? Would you be present for them? That's the questions that I ask to people, because we have to cut through the BS to get to what's really showing up for them. And legacy, in the pursuit of a legacy, when you won't even know what legacy you leave because you'll be dead, I think is somewhat misguided. That's all.
Well, absolutely, my friend. We only have one life to live, and it's incumbent upon all of us to sort of point our compass of impact in the direction we want it to go, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, Adam, I want to thank you for. Oh, first of all, I almost forgot. If people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that, my friend?
Yeah, great question, mate. So, my company name is A-Game Consultancy. So there's quite a lot of Adam Smiths, unfortunately, so you might not find that if you Google me. But if you type in Adam Smith A-Game Consultancy on Google, you should find me, or on LinkedIn is my main platform. We're also on TikTok as A-Game Consultancy. We're on Instagram. We've got our own YouTube channel, and we've got our own podcast as well called A-Game Unfiltered.
Well, fabulous, my friend. I want to thank you for all the great work that you do to help CEOs and entrepreneurs level up their game of both a business potential and a life impact. My friend, you're really doing great work, and it was a real honor to engage in a conversation with you this morning, and I want to thank you for being here. It's most appreciated.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, Kevin. It's been great to meet you as well.